bureaucracy in government.
Well, the senator actually took a step in the right direction, at least trying to do something better. But I think it's very simple. The way to fix the program, the way to fix the choice card, which doesn't necessarily work outright, it's very simple. My first day of Congress, and people say maybe I'm being a little outlandish, but not at all. I'm going to through the House, somebody's going to have to submit the bill before it gets to the Senate. But I'm going to write it. I'm going to hand it off to somebody, and it doesn't have to be many pages long. It's pretty simple. It could be as simple as every member of the legislative, executive, and judicial branch must have the same health care as our veterans.
Nice. Kind of a money where your mouth is sort of deal.
Yeah, let them sit and let them see how they like it, and then maybe they'll fix it. And then, hey, if they don't like it and they want to keep their own health care plan, well, here's the only other alternative I'll consider at the moment, is that every single veteran gets a real choice card, not the one that's currently handling right now, where they can go to either the VA or, as they did so for us, they can go to any doctor, any hospital, and any healthcare provider in the world. Services paid right away in full. I don't like that you hear stories of people not being sure if they go to an outside source if that care is going to be taken care of, and they treat them, and then the bill ends up getting passed on. I don't like hearing stories of how somebody has to be 50% disabled in order not to have their medical coverage not deducted from the retirement. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between 40% disabled and 50% disabled? All the money that comes out of their retirement. It's like, hold on a minute. These little things don't make sense. It's called saying, hey, thanks for your service, but I don't appreciate you all that much.
You're absolutely right. And, you mentioned what's the difference between the ratings, and really it's an arbitrary decision in so many cases because, because of the backlogs and all the claims issues, it's ridiculous. Now, with the VA, one of the big problems there is this culture. It's toxic. It's absolutely horrific. And they've had no success in holding these people accountable. And how do we deal with the unions? One, to hold these people accountable, and would you be willing to put out a bill requiring vets getting a better job preference with the VA? Especially folks
absolutely.
Are you aware of what the only job is that the VA holds specifically for veterans? There's only one.
Refresh me.
The only job that the VA holds, specifically for veterans is janitor. Every other position at the VA has to go out and be advertised through through the government union system first. And only then, if nobody takes it, can a veteran apply for that who's not already in the union. What do you think of that?
Can I just use the word asinine? I think it's okay to say on air. I don't get it. I would also advocate for every doctor, every staff member in the VA system to be held up for evaluation. I've heard stories of people about to retire not wanting to help any veterans and cursing them out and saying, you're not my effing problem anymore. Mm-hmm. Why can't they have reviews that are contingent? Reviews where they must score I'm just putting this number out there, 75% or better on their evaluations from the veterans. Otherwise, they lose their pension and they're fired or put up for review and then fired. You know what I'm saying? If it happens more than once, something like that. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, in a free market, if you don't like the service you're receiving somewhere from a doctor or somewhere else, you leave. Right. You can go. And I actually think a real true choice card, like I had mentioned, where you can go anywhere, will make the VA hospitals more accountable. And the bottom line is, if they're budgeted, if they're not providing a service that our veterans like, and they're going down in size, then they go down in size. It's simple.
Mm-hmm. And I love exactly what you're saying here. I think you're spot on. But my question is, do you have the backbone to stand up to these federal government unions? Because, this president flat out refuses to. He threatens to veto any bill that takes away from what he calls the government worker protections, and everything just kind of gets lost in the shuffle because of that veto threat. Are you willing and able to stand up to that kind of outside pressure?
Absolutely. I'm only standing for the people here in Arizona and then the rest of the United States of America. But when I go to Washington, D.C., Mitch McConnell's not going to be my boss. The president is not technically, well, maybe he is technically the leader in the United States, the president of the people, but the people that I have to represent, the voice that I have to advocate for, that I have to be the microphone for, are the 6.7 million people here in Arizona. And 10% of the population happens to be our veterans, and they need a much more powerful, loud voice. It's just one group. It's just one portion of what ails this country right now. I see, as I know I've mentioned, Jefferson, but I don't think Madison, Hamilton, or Franklin would be very pleased to see what has happened in Washington, D.C. It's more of a tyrannical form of government in my eyes than I think that they could have even imagined in this republic that we could have had.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree there. And let's talk about some of these other issues, because I could talk all day on veterans issues and everything, but as a congressman, you have to focus on so many different things, and we live in a very, very scary world. What do you see as the top policy issues out there that need to be addressed right away?
Taxation is tremendous. We have to also look at our foreign affairs and our national defense right away, too. We have so many issues with immigration. All these things are tied together in so many different ways. Our taxation system, for one. We have a form of taxation which taxes the people based upon the fruits of their labor, not their free will. And that absolutely wasn't what our founders intended. What it has basically done by having a 16th Amendment and going to an income tax is that it's made the coffers of Washington, D.C. that much bigger, that much more powerful. In fact, and I mentioned it when I'm on the campaign trail, most people don't realize this, but since about 1950, 1960, the percentage of the purse strings that Congress controls of the states has grown by over tenfold. So basically, we're at the will of the federal government back in the states to tell us what we can do. This is thoroughly weakening all the republics and, our 10th Amendment rights, it seems, in our states. So the federal government has basically gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and made the voice of the people quieter and given us less power to, I guess, grow and expand in our own states as far as a free market comes to play. You talk about, other fears. Our national defense. I'm dumbfounded that back in 2008, Barack Obama mothballed our battleships. Our battleships are very symbolic of a show of power, a show of force. Plus the fact that you can park a battleship right off the coast of any country and let them try to bombard it, and they can't get through 3 feet of thick steel like that. They will not sink a battleship. And that's imposing. And that also creates a good missile defense system of sorts, which we have absolutely nothing on the eastern seaboard. Our western seaboard is very weak, so we're very, very vulnerable to ballistic missile attacks from countries like, North Korea, which are funded by pretty much Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of these things where our current administration and even the opposition parties they don't talk about it a whole lot, and I don't really understand why they haven't done that a lot. But looking at national defense and comparing what you look at in as opposed to your candidate, or I'm sorry, your opponent, is a stark difference, or do you kind of have a copycat type platform?
No, absolutely not. Nobody seems to mention our missile defense system. Nobody seems to mention Israel on my platform either, in my campaign either. John McCain, as we well know, was the one who helped to prop up the Muslim Brotherhood in Morsi years ago.
Yeah,
and he's created a bigger problem for Israel than anybody could imagine. They have 200, 300 million people that want to destroy them surrounding their small country. And John McCain, when you would think we might have an ally in al-Sisi, the president of Egypt, who came in and said, hey, Egypt, we must look Islamic State terrorism in the face, and everybody around the world was saying, wow, they're going to really stand up to this. This is great. McCain is part of the problem when he helps to defund them with the Senate Armed Services Committee with military aid to help them, you know?
Right.
So all it does is create a fodder for, the ISIS terrorists to, just expand.
Yeah, and John McCain was also heavily criticized for being photographed with the quote unquote moderate rebels, and of course we've seen all the issues play out with those, with the training failures, and the rebel groups that are backed by the CIA and the ones that are backed by the Department of Defense are actually fighting each other in Syria. That's a real quagmire, and it does affect relations with Russia, Iran, as well as basically the entire Middle East. What do you see as a better stance and approach towards Syria and the Middle East in general?
Well, for one, I don't think John McCain did a good job of vetting who he was supposed to be meeting with. I believe it was one of my endorsers, General Paul Valley, and I might be wrong, so don't take this to task, who told me this, but they were saying when I saw McCain meeting with those people, I could have told him he went in the wrong direction. He was talking to the wrong folks at the time when he was meeting with the terrorist groups. That's embarrassing. You don't negotiate, you don't deal with terrorists like that. Now, as far as Syria, I've got to tell you one thing that irks me a lot is when it comes to the Syrian refugees. Mm-hmm. And, John McCain saying that he can vet them, and Obama wanting to bring more of them in here. Listen, if you or I, if in your home state, our federal government came after you and said we're going to get you, and you did not have at that time the ability to fight back, would you want to go halfway across the world, or would you prefer to go maybe to the next state and regroup?
Yeah,
you want to go to the next state.
You regroup and you stand and fight.
You stand and fight, exactly. Now, we're talking about Syria. Israel's neighbor to their east, to their east is Jordan. Mm-hmm. Jordan has a small population of about 6 million people, and they're not financially well off, that country. They took approximately 1 million Syrian refugees in. Now, wouldn't it made more sense for us to maybe find a coalition of countries to give a little bit of aid to Jordan so they could better afford to help these refugees, keep them there, let them have a little bit of financial stability so they don't become so overwhelmed and weak that Islamic State terrorism, wreaks havoc in Jordan and puts, the eastern borders of Israel at greater risk. That would have made probably the most sense because let's be honest, we have the Peshmerga, the Kurds in northern part of the Middle East that are very helpful to us, but Israel by far is the most powerful nation military-wise in the Middle East. They're able to confront Islamic State jihad in the face. We need to have them strong in order to better assist us, without a doubt. John McCain has just not been helpful there. As I told you, with him, creating the idea that we can vet everybody when we absolutely cannot. Him propping up the Muslim Brotherhood, his foreign policy has been an utter failure. And as far as him being the chair of the Armed Services Committee, like I said, there you go. He defunded, Egypt with their aid there, and also what has he done for our missile defense system? What has he done for our battleships? He keeps, helping out our planes, and that's great, but he's only fulfilling one part of the promise for a United States senator to protect the people.
Absolutely. And just to touch real quick here, you mentioned, the refugee crisis, which is absolutely crippling parts of Europe. And I have this belief that, wholeheartedly that we're going to see problems here as well. And that's shared by a lot of folks out there. What is your take on, this approach to the Syrian refugees? You mentioned, McCain saying that we can vet these people. The president, and his team they're vetting upwards of 600 people a day. So there's no way they're getting it done properly. What's the right approach to this thing?
We can't. And as I said, keep them closer to home. You can secure an area to make sure they're not in harm's way and then let them go back. There's nothing in our documentation anywhere that says that we have to take people here. From a moral standpoint, with the ability to be able to assist if people are in harm's way, is it the right thing to do? Absolutely, but it doesn't mean we have to take them in here. We don't have the capabilities to do so, to vet people properly. We don't. We absolutely don't. As I said, it's not the humane thing turn your backs on somebody that has a genocidal, issue.